Hello, everyone, and welcome to Medford Happenings, a show for and about the city of Medford, and I am John Petrella. And the purpose of our program is to give Medford citizens facts and information to help you make informed choices and to discover city services or businesses you may not have been aware of. And our guest today is Chris Oates, candidate for the State Representative, 34th Middlesex District. Welcome, Chris.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Good to have you on the show, Chris. We are going to go right into it, Chris. So first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is Chris Oates?
Great question. I ask myself that every day. So I grew up in Canton, just south of Boston. Now it's known as the home of the Karen Reed trial, which is a weird thing for
Yes,
your
it is.
hometown.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very strange.
Yes.
But so I grew up in Canton. I went to college in Rhode Island and then grad school in England. I was doing a PhD in international relations because I want to go in foreign policy. I was 17 when the Iraq War started, so I was like, I want to go into foreign policy, prevent the next one
Nice.
from
Yeah.
happening.
Nice.
And then after the PhD, because I decided I didn't want to go into academia, I started working it's called a political risk analyst. So basically a pundit, but we were supposed to be correct about our predictions.
Okay.
And that led me more into state level policy because that's where I thought there was like a lot of stuff that mattered, not just in general, but like to my life and like housing and, traffic. And that led me to join the ranked choice voting campaign in 2020. And that was around the time where I moved to Somerville. I live like literally on the Somerville Medford border near Magoon Square.
Okay.
And yeah, and after that campaign ended, I started a business to try to make state legislatures more accessible. My son was born at the exact same time, which is a terrible way to start a business. Like, anyone out there thinking about starting a business when you're about to have a child, reconsider, please. It's not the right
Yeah,
time.
it's
Um,
complicated.
yeah, like a lot of late nights from the
Yes.
baby, and then a lot of early mornings from the startup. But yeah, just been in around the policy world, and when I heard that this seat was coming up, open, and knowing that I could do the job, and knowing it's not like a convenient time, and that my son's 4, and I'm still the primary caregiver because my wife's a doctor and works very long hours, very difficult
Okay.
hours.
Yep.
But I was like, you know what? If you think you can serve your community, I think you kind of you owe it to them to do that.
You give it a try. Yep.
Yeah,
And sounds like you got some good experience there. And it also sounds like you're a very busy guy, and that's good. Good to be busy.
yeah.
Always good. All right. So, now that we know a little bit about you, obviously you have some experience. Can you, maybe give us, what is it about your experience that you think, it's prepared you to be an effective state representative?
Yeah, this is a great question because I feel like so often people just ask you what you want to do and not like whether you can actually do it.
Right,
And I feel like there's three things that if you're going to be a good state rep, given the good ones that I've seen, the
right.
first one is you got to be able to break down policy because like it doesn't matter if you care about housing if you have no idea how any of it works. So you got to break down policy. So I've done that, being a political risk analyst. It was every day we would get in there and we were basically told see what's in the news and then try to forecast the next 2 years of that story. So
Wow.
every day,
Okay.
and we would have experts on the line, former academics, former national policymakers, and you call them up and be like, "Tell me what's going to happen on renewable energy." One of my best predictions was this was back in 2013. If you remember, there was a government shutdown in Washington
Yep. Yep.
over Obamacare, and I
Right.
predicted the exact day it would end because there was also a concern about the debt ceiling, and I was like, I
Yes.
think they will end it the day of the debt ceiling. They'll just wrap it all together. So you have to understand the policy. I think you have to be able to build statewide coalitions because the state houses most people do not. I mean, basically, no one else represents our district. I'd be the only one with one senator. So you have to be able to reach out to people from different areas, bring them together. And I've done that on the ranked choice voting campaign. But the biggest one actually during this campaign has been interesting is you really have to be able to listen to people who are not like you. Because most of you're representing a lot of people who are not you. They're different
Yep.
communities, ages, backgrounds. And living in England in grad school, my house, we had South Africans, Australians, New Zealanders, Canadians, Brits, Europeans, Indians. Like you just got used to being around people of different backgrounds, and you just
Right.
get comfortable with like, oh, I didn't know about that. Can you explain a little bit more? And I
Yeah.
know obviously in Medford and Somerville, like it's not maybe that much of a difference, but there's
Yeah.
differences. There's people with different backgrounds, different life experiences, and the most important thing I think for a representative is to know that you're not governing based on your own experience. You want to govern based on everyone else's experiences.
And that's I love that because that's so true.
Yeah.
Everyone else's experience. That's a big thing as far as I'm concerned. That's
Yeah.
huge. Um, the state legislature, how do you feel it operates overall? I mean, do you see a need to reform the legislature to be more open, maybe transparent and, accountable to the people they represent?
Exactly. And the last one I think is like the biggest one is accountability
Yes,
because we have the least competitive legislature in the country. And what you get in a competitive race, like we're doing it right now, you're getting a chance to interview a candidate. I'm being held accountable. I'm telling you what I want to do.
right,
And when you have a competitive election, that forces people to go out and compete for votes and tell people like, hey, this is what I want to do. And 2 years later, if we have another competitive election, you get to say to me like, "Hey, why didn't you do what you promised to do?" We're gonna, that to me is the big thing because transparency matters. But if you have a transparent legislature, but no one ever runs for office, like, what is it? It doesn't make as much of a difference. I feel like transparency is a component of the broader idea of accountability. So yeah, one of the things I did, and I told people, I was like, this is gonna be the most boring part of my campaign, is a 10-point plan for more competitive elections in Massachusetts. Everything from term limits to having a state office that helps orchestrate legislative debates. And
right,
I know that like no one wants to hear a 10-point plan when you're like knocking on doors, but I think it's really important because any one of those things would help us get to a sense where like voters are in charge more.
right. And we need to get there. We really do in this state. Voters have to be a little bit more accountable. I agree with that
Yeah.
100%. Um, all right, so, you know, the, the open floor votes, that's what I call them. Do you support open floor votes on legislation? Honestly, a lot of the outcomes seem to be predetermined by leadership. That's the, I'm not an expert, but I do look into it. That's the way it seems. How do you feel about that? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think I mean, I'd love to have more open floor votes. I'd love to have just more open debate. Because that's part of the problem is when all the debate is happening behind closed doors when you're negotiating stuff. It's not that anyone's being nefarious or anything. It's just that the voters don't know who's standing where. And if you have a vote that comes down and it's 199 to 1, well, you don't know how many of those people were really
Right,
like on each side of the issue. And because again, to get back to the accountability issue, like if you're a voter and you think I didn't like to see that, you want to know, was my representative truly in favor of it, or were they actually against it, but they lost the battle behind closed doors? And it's information for the voters to know where their representatives stand, because ultimately, what's ideally is that every representative is replaceable, and
right,
every rep goes up there and says, "Here's my vision. Here's where I want to take the country," and you're basically an option on the menu and the voters get to say, actually, I don't like that option anymore. But if you don't know what what the options are, because
right.
they're not taking open votes and they're not giving you that
Yeah,
information,
yeah, exactly.
yeah,
I mean, that's the way it seems.
yeah.
They're not taking open votes anymore. I mean, it seems like they haven't in a while, Chris.
And I think it gets back to if you don't need to, I think one of the reasons why you would do open votes is that you'd say, like, I need to show to my voters what my stance is, and I need to prove to them why that is. And so if you don't face that kind of competition, yeah, you don't need to do that. And you're like,
Right,
well, why am I going to take a stand? Some people might like it, some people might not like it
right,
if I don't need to. But if it's like, oh man, I'm getting really crushed on this issue on social media. I need to I'm telling people I'm for it, but I really need to show that I'm for it. And so that's what I think. It's like that popular pressure of I need to win my next reelection. It's going to be tough. I need
Nice.
to show voters where I stand. And I think that's how you can get it a little bit
Yeah,
more.
I like that. Before we go on to the next question, and I just want to make sure, um, you know, people want to, I want to get in touch with you. I want to ask you a question. I want to send something to you. Do you have a website? I mean, what's the best way before we go any further to,
Sure.
to actually reach you? Like, I know, people watch the show, so do you have a
Yeah.
way to get to you?
Yeah. So it's chrisoates.org. And we got a contact form there. It's chris@chrisoates.org if you want the email. And then the phone number, I should have it off the top of my head, but it's on the website. Sorry, it's like the official campaign number. So it's not the one
Okay.
it's not.
So, but if they
It
go to the
is,
website, okay,
yeah,
good.
it's 617-903-8155.
Okay. So just do me a favor, repeat that one more time. I
Yeah,
like our audience to really, you know,
absolutely. 617-903-8155.
and the web page again?
chrisoates.org, OATES.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I have a funny feeling you'll hear from some of the people that are watching the show today.
Please.
Yeah, no, it's good. All right, so now we'll move on. Do you support requiring all lobbying activities, including, procurement-based activities, should they be available, reported to the public?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
No question.
No, no question. Anything that involves, money with lobbying. And in fact, we have some pretty good disclosure stuff. And a couple of years ago, actually, I wanted to see, I wanted to like explore it a little bit because the business I run, it's for legislative transcripts and, it's very hard to market legislative transcripts. So we would just do research into
Okay.
the policy process. And one of them was finding out who are the top lobbyists in the state by earnings. What are they lobbying on? What are the firms? And what was really interesting is that, and I think this gets to kind of the interesting part of Massachusetts is there are a lot of lobbyists that earn more money than the speaker and the Senate president. And that's in part because, it's not a well-paid job, public service. So the speaker
No,
and the
I know,
Senate
we
president,
understand,
that's
but
it.
still, so there's actually, say that again.
So if you go to the Secretary of State's website or the Secretary of the Commonwealth website, you can
Right.
see disclosure forms for lobbyists, what they're spending money on,
Okay.
what they're lobbying about, if they're donating to any candidate. So I tracked which legislators got the most money from lobbyists. I
Wow.
don't remember what those numbers were. It was a
Yeah,
couple of
no,
years
that's
ago.
fine. Yeah.
But yeah, that is a good thing because it meant that me just, this was before I was a candidate, could just go in and get a little bit of sense of
Yeah.
that world. And most of the lobbyists that we have in Massachusetts, there's nothing nefarious about it. Again,
I understand.
they're
Yeah.
being paid to advocate it,
Right.
but that it is really important that we know that, so that
Yes.
when we go to the polls to vote for someone, we know, hey, they actually got a lot of money from lobbyists. Maybe that's a good thing, maybe it's a bad thing, but at the very least, we know. And again, that's why I think, as you said, transparency is so important,
Yeah.
openness is so important, and because that gives the voters the chance for accountability.
Yeah. And I agree, there's nothing nefarious about it, but still, if, I always think that if someone, if a lobbyist, whatever, and I get such and such amount of money, and
Yeah,
then something comes before me, I mean,
yeah, I know. And
right?
I should say, it's nothing necessarily nefarious. Of
No, no,
course, across
no.
the country, there have been cases, but
Yes, that's,
you're
yeah,
right. I think it's the sort of thing that we as the voters, it's really important to have that information out there so that
right,
we can then
right.
better assess, and especially for journalists to be able to dig into this. Because,
Yes,
if you talk to any journalist, they'll tell you that when the lobbyist disclosure forms comes out, or especially when the campaign finance forms come out,
right,
that's what they really look into because
yeah,
that is where they get to see inside the process a little bit.
right,
And
yeah,
it's so important to have that scrutiny from the free press onto
yeah,
those in government because that's what helps keep them accountable, in
right.
addition to obviously elections every 2 years.
Right. No, no, I hear you loud and clear, and I don't think it's nefarious, and I think it's part of the process, in my
Yeah.
opinion. However, like I say, sometimes, if I'm up there and I'm gonna vote on something
Yeah.
and you're handing me a
Yeah.
check for whatever, it's,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's,
And I mean, for me, I'm not taking any PAC money. I
I
signed the
know
People's
that.
Pledge, and I think that's just because it's so important to be able to have people trust that it's, my
Yeah.
judgment is only for what's good with the district. It's not, I'm not going to have a second job because I don't want any, I mean, I don't have the time for a second job, but I also don't
Right.
want there to be any concerns about conflict of interest. And this goes to lobbyists too, I want people to know that if I'm taking a vote on a bill, it's
Yeah.
because they came to me with an idea, but they didn't come to me with money.
Yes.
And I think most of the folks on, in this world, I think agree with that is like really important that if there's any
Absolutely.
appearance of a conflict of interest, you disclose it, you
Yeah.
have the ethics form, and you make sure that, in any case, you just go to the House General Counsel and say, like, hey, what do I have to do? I just want to make sure that we're all on the up and up because there's really zero, in my mind, you want to have zero gray area. You want to have zero accusations against you because it's so
Right.
important that voters
Yeah.
can trust the judgment of the person they vote for.
And it's comforting to know, I know there's a group of yous that decided no dark money, no this, no that, and you didn't take it.
Yeah,
I think that's commendable. I really do. I think that's
thanks.
good. I
Yeah,
just,
it was a very easy thing. I was actually at Powder House Park,
yeah,
and a couple of the officers from the Somerville Democrats came and explained it, and I was like, yeah, that sounds great. Let's do
yeah,
it. Yeah.
great. No, I like that. I really do. I think it's nice. All right, so this is a question, boy, oh boy, it turns up the heat. It's always talked about. There's 5,000 different things about it, but can you sort of give us, like your opinion on affordable housing?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a tough subject. It's a top subject.
Yeah. So I'd say there's a few different parts of it, but the two big ones I think are that we don't have enough homes in Massachusetts. So and this isn't necessarily an issue of Somerville and Medford, like we've built a lot, but
Right,
it's the suburban areas, around 128 and 4 to 495 that
right.
are a lot of them are single family zoning. There was all the fighting over the MBTA Communities Act. So the governor says that we need 220,000 units by
Okay.
2035. We're working our way through that. So that's
Yep.
part of it is the supply. The other thing is just it costs a lot to build in Massachusetts. The permitting process is very long. We could streamline
Yes.
it. We could try to add more modular housing or which can help. So that can really help. And then hopefully if you do that, if you are adding the supply, if you're building the units you need at a lower cost, then you can get the revenue to subsidize the homes for those who can't afford the market rate homes. And that's normal. Like every country in the world, you're going to have that. But you want those subsidies, you want there to be more of them, and you want them to go further. And so
Right.
that's why, again, solving that scarcity problem and making it faster to build, it helps, it just helps everyone. It's one of those
Right.
win-win situations.
Yeah, we do. We need to build more and we need to build them maybe a little bit smaller. There's nothing wrong with that, right?
There's a ballot question this year called the starter homes question where they're going to talk about minimum lot size. And that's a good example of it's a
Yeah,
small detail. And again, that was really going to be impactful for some of the areas, but a bit further out in the greater Boston
yeah.
region. But it's a detail where if you tweak it, more homes get built, more
Right.
homes get built at a lower
Yeah.
price. And, especially, there's a young family that just needs a little bit more space than a studio apartment that they're already in
Right.
gets a small home. The kind of home that my mom grew up in, my grandparents bought after World
Yes.
War II. We
There,
don't make enough of those because it's too hard to build.
no. But
Yeah,
there's got to be a way to make them, affordable. Let's call it, bringing the building costs down or something. That there's, I mean, you mentioned some things early just a few minutes ago about, the affordability part of it. There's got to be a way to bring the cost down a little bit. I mean,
there definitely is. Yeah, permitting and kind of streamlining that. So for
right.
one example, there's actually a guy on Reddit who's building an
Okay.
ADU in Somerville, an accessory dwelling unit
Yep.
in Somerville, and he's talking about the whole process. And it's a great example of just we have different building standards for accessory dwelling units in different cities.
Right.
And we're still working our way through that process of how to streamline that and getting
Okay.
the financing right. And he was mentioning, I believe it was that there was a certain permit to get the foundation poured, and then you needed to do a different permit once the foundation was poured. And again,
Yes.
it's one of those things. You just have to work through the details. And
Right.
as you work through it and as you focus on it and you're focusing on following up and implementing things, We can do that, and so it's again, it's not like we need to dramatically revolutionize all of Massachusetts. We're not knocking down all of our
Yep,
homes
I
and
like
building
that.
up
Yep,
skyscrapers, but you do those tweaks and you do enough of those tweaks, and it makes a big difference.
yep. Sounds good. Here's a question I love to, uh, how do you feel? You mentioned it earlier, and I liked your answer. How do you feel about term limits? And when I say term limits, I'm talking the speaker, the majority leader, and the Senate committee chairs, put it that way, because I mean, that's where the power is, and do you believe we should have term limits?
Yeah, so I actually came around. Yeah, this and just in general, I've come around on term limits during this campaign because
Yep,
before I wasn't a fan because you lose institutional knowledge and there's always the worry that your last term, people are just thinking about what's their next job.
right,
However, during this campaign, I've really seen how hard it is to run, especially as an outsider who isn't already in office.
right,
And there's no way I would have run if Christine Barber, our current representative, was still running again. I mean, I agree with her on a lot of things, but
right,
even assuming I didn't agree with her. I
right.
wouldn't have run because it's so hard to challenge an incumbent.
It is.
And even if I was diametrically opposed with a 4-year-old at home, I'm not going to give up a whole summer, ask my friends and family to donate to the campaign just to lose by 60 points.
I hear
Um,
you. Yep.
and so that's why, to me, I've come around on term limits because it forces open seats and it forces competition. So what I proposed, and this is just one idea, is that you're allowed 12 years or 6 terms in the House and 6 terms or 12 years in the Senate. And so that means that if you're a senator and you represent an average of 4 House members,
Right.
every cycle or every other cycle, one of the representatives in your district is being term limited out, and they're incentivized to challenge you because they're going out of office anyway. Why not give it a run for the Senate? And you
Sure.
just create that churn and that constant competition.
Right.
And so there are people who are against term limits. That's fine. We can have a debate, but this is one of those things that just being a candidate, I've seen, oh, actually, competition is so important. Forcing candidates to go out and knock on thousands of doors is really important. And you don't really get that if you just have easy re-election. So I get it's one of those things where it's not an all or nothing thing. It's a 51-49 type decision.
I hear
But
you.
I've
Yep.
shifted towards that we should
Yep.
have it just because
Yep.
it helps unlock some competition.
And it's nice to know you're able to shift,
Yeah.
because some people get up there and it's like, that's it. So
Yeah.
it's good to know that you're
Yeah.
flexible. I think that's great.
Well, when new information comes in, you
There
gotta be
you
able to
go.
process it.
Yes. I like that. I respect that. Okay. So this will be the last question. And now this question affects me now. I hate to admit it, but what am I going to do? I'm a senior citizen now.
Yeah.
So, a lot of senior citizens do not have stability, stay where they are, that, they've been in the same home for 40, 50 years. There's just so much going on, Chris. Um, you know, is there a way to get stability? I know a lot of things are being done for senior citizens, but it just seems to me like, there could be a little more. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think this is I mean obviously I've talked to a lot of seniors and there's specific things like the buses, making sure they're funded, energy
Yes.
cost, helping to bring down energy costs by adding clean energy onto our grid. But one of the big ones, and this is such a technical thing, but it has huge implications, is I really think we need to be shifting more of the financing of government away from cities and towards the state. So,
Okay.
for example, public schools, are funded by a combination of city and state money. But cities and towns are mostly funded by property taxes. About 58% of municipal funding is property taxes.
Yes.
Almost nothing is property tax at the state level. About half of our tax revenue at the state is income tax. And so
Okay.
obviously, if you're a senior and you're on a fixed income, um, you know, income tax doesn't affect you as much as maybe your house is going up in value because we
Right.
have a housing shortage. And if there's a Prop 2.5 override, which might be necessary, but the downside of a Prop 2.5 override is that your property taxes do go up.
They go up.
And so if we could shift the funding of more government operations, shift it more towards the state, where those tax sources are maybe not as dependent just on property tax, a
Okay.
bit more diversified, but it's more about like a diversified stock portfolio. Not that I have one or anything, but like, you hear
Yeah,
people say, oh, you got to
yeah,
diversify your stocks.
right.
Um,
I hear you.
but so the state can do that, and the state can, I think, be a bit more flexible, whereas cities are much more concentrated on property revenue. And I feel like what we've done in the past 20 years is we've asked cities to take on a lot more of the burden, and we haven't, at the state level, properly funded them. So it wouldn't be an all or nothing thing, but it would be to shift a little bit more um,
Yeah.
education towards the state, and then also to try to give more state aid towards cities so that they wouldn't be so dependent on property tax. That's obviously easier said than done because every city is going to want more money from the state, and you got to get the money from the
Absolutely.
state somewhere. But that's why I think economic growth is, it's economic growth statewide is the thing that underpins everything in government. Because if
Right.
we can have an economy that is really growing and is delivering those tax revenues to the state, then a lot of problems get easier because you have some of the money to solve them. And if we don't do it, if we keep losing residents to other states with lower costs of living and cheaper homes, then
Yeah.
all of a sudden, the state doesn't have the money to help out, and the cities don't have the money to help out, and that's why we have towns across the Commonwealth
Yeah.
doing Prop 2.5 override after Prop 2.5 override, and I think more economic growth that helps, fill the coffers of the state, and the state can send some of that to the cities.
Yeah.
It helps out a little bit. Not going to say it's going to solve everyone's
Oh,
problems,
no, yeah.
but it does help. To me,
It
that's
does.
kind of
Yeah.
how I see government is like,
Yeah.
can we do some growth, incremental benefits every single month, every single year, just to make
Yeah.
life a little bit better all the time?
Yeah. No, all good answers, Chris. I like that. And like I say, it is. It would be nice, to shift the burden, so to speak, from maybe the cities to the state and,
Yeah.
get the money and spend it right. I think that's another, important thing we need to do. But, it's that time again. I could talk to you for another hour, Chris, believe me. But before we go, can you one more time, your website, the phone number, just so I really want people to be able to get in touch with you if they need be. I think that's important. That's all.
Absolutely. So the website's chrisoates.org, Oates. Email is chris@chrisoates.org, and the phone number is 617-903-8155.
All right, Chris, I really mean this. Thank you so much for joining us. It's nice to get, this was a good experience. Nice to get to know what you're all about, how you feel about things, how you think. So I really, we want to thank you for joining us on Medford Happenings. We wish you the best of luck. We know you really put yourself out there when you run for any office. So, good luck running, for the 34th Middlesex District. And hopefully we'll have you on the show again. But thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you so much. It's been great talking to you.
All right,
Appreciate it,
have a
John.
great one. Thanks, Chris. Good luck.
Bye.
I want to thank Chris Oates for joining us. Great show. I also want to take a minute to thank everyone who has been watching the show, and thank you for all your feedback. If you would like to appear on the show, please contact us at Medford Happenings 02155@gmail.com, and we will get back to you. And thank you for getting in touch with us, and we will try and get everyone on the show. You will be able to watch replays of this program on Medford Community Media Access Channel. Also, check out our website, medfordhappenings.com. It's a great website. Please take a look. And you can either view or listen to the podcast of this program. You can find all of our shows on YouTube. Just go to youtube.com, search for Medford Happenings, will come up. Please like and subscribe to our channels and videos. You can also find us on Facebook at Medford Happenings. We also have our own subreddit, which you can find us at reddit.com/r/Medford Happenings. And that's it for today. For the Medford Happenings team, Paul, Marco, Bruce, James, and Joseph, I'm John Petrella, and remember, Medford, stay informed. Thank you.